Thank you everyone for joining today and welcome to the final installment of the Poetica Marketing Summer Webinar Series Email Edition. If you've made it this far, congratulations. And I know some of you have been here for each session. So congratulations on graduating from this very informal marketing series. I will say there might be one more at the end of August. There have been a couple of requests for one on social media. We've been talking about that internally, so that might be forthcoming. We will share more information with that as it comes. But I'm joined today by my friend and one of our partners, Dan Simpkins of DX Performance. So welcome everybody. I'm excited to be talking about email marketing today. My name is Pat. I am the founder of Poetica Marketing. We're a content marketing agency and events coordination company, which means we help companies stand out online and in person. I am founder, technically CEO, creative director, whatever you want to call me. I'm the guy that creates content. And I'm lucky enough to be joined with my wife, Regina, who's our events coordinator. So we are the dynamic duo and 1-2 punch over here at Poetica, and I'm excited to be joined by Dan. Dan, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Dan Simpkins, and I am the owner of DX Performance, a marketing agency that covers the whole gambit of your marketing needs. That goes from branding and design work to website development, and paid ad campaigns. We do print. So it's really about finding the ideal customer and getting in front of them. And of course, email marketing is a big part of that as well.
I'm super excited to have Dan here today as well. He has a really deep knowledge in technology, and he's also a bit of an AI consultant as well. So he has a really interesting perspective on things that are on the horizon. And towards the end today, we'll talk a little bit more about how AI can help inform some of your email marketing decisions as well. So this is the final installment of this webinar series, not seminar series. Our first one, just to go back in time a little bit, on July 10th, we covered content marketing and content strategy. On the 16th, we covered SEO. And last week, we covered blogging practices for business. So if you missed any of these and you want to check them out, you can view all of them on our YouTube channel, and they're all available for free there. For today, though, we'll start things off by talking about why email marketing is important from a business perspective and some of the benefits that it has. Then we'll talk about a couple of case studies. We'll pay attention to some email marketing stats that are important to keep in mind as you're moving forward. We'll talk about strategies for building an email list. Then we'll move into some email copywriting best practices. We'll look a little bit at the anatomy of an email and how to pay attention to each section. Dan will walk us through some email tools and platforms. And then, as promised, we'll talk about AI. And then at the end, we'll talk about how to prove out your email success, basically how to track your progress. And then we'll have some time for questions. And speaking of questions, if anybody has questions during this presentation, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, and we'll answer those in real time and then get back into the presentation. I do want this to feel a bit more like a conversation rather than an hour-long lecture, which I'm sure everybody hates. But to start things off, let's talk about why email marketing is so important from a business perspective. If pound for pound, email marketing is one of the most cost-effective marketing channels available. In fact, research has shown that for every dollar you invest in email marketing, you'll get somewhere between $36 and $40 in return. That's a huge ROI. And if you think about this in practice, if you have a list of 1,000 engaged subscribers and you announce a new product or a new service and you just get 10 people to convert and actually buy that new product or service, that's a huge deal because you've probably spent maybe 2 at most hours on that email and putting your graphics together and getting your copy together, and all of a sudden you result in 10 sales. That's a huge ROI. So email is often ignored, but it is a really, really powerful marketing strategy and can be a huge revenue booster as well. Just to illustrate this a little further, Dan and I will walk you through a couple of real world scenarios. I've mentioned this case study a couple times during this webinar series, but we worked with a small online record store. They were generating about $300 to $600 per day just through their regular marketing efforts. And they came to us and said they wanted help marketing their anniversary sale one year. And by sending out really targeted, really well put together emails, we were able to generate close to $10,000 in revenue for them in one day. So when you really focus on email, when you really have a great list, when you really have great material, when you really have great content, you can have a really, really, really strong ROI. So when you think about dollar in, $40 out, it's not all that unrealistic when you put the legwork in to get yourself into that position. And Dan has a great case study to share as well.
Yeah, so there was a local remote online notary. And so this was something that was passed in Pennsylvania around the time of COVID. And not a lot of people were aware of it. So his goal was to say, hey, I want to target lawyers and law professionals across Pennsylvania. And right, he's located in Pittsburgh. So I pulled a list of all lawyers and we ran a campaign. And, the idea of the email campaign is you need to send multiple emails to warm up your ideal client. So that's a campaign. So this isn't just a one email situation, but he did get some clients out of that. But what also helped was on the other side of the state, not only did he get some clients, but they started referring him as well. So that's where the ROI sort of even continues to happen beyond that one campaign that was focused on expanding his exposure across Pennsylvania.
Yeah, really great stuff. And Dan, we'll keep it in your court to walk us through some email marketing stats to kind of keep in mind as we talk about opens, clicks, bounces.
Yeah, so one of the things you want to look at is open rate, right? How many people are opening your email? And so here you can see the overall average is around 34%, but they're giving you these sort of examples of the high, which is religion, and then the lower end, right? Because each industry is going to be different. So, when I look at this with religion, I would say that, right, they have people of a common philosophy, people who relate strongly to the message. So I could see why a higher open rate happens there, where computers and electronics, that's a very flooded market. There's all kinds of computers and electronic gadgets out there, which would be on the lower side. But everyone's going to be different, but around 25% to a third is a very healthy range of open. So go to the next. And then once they open it, do they actually click on the link that you provide within the email? And that's the click rate, right? So it's because some of those opens might be they accidentally opened your email and then quickly shut, oh, this isn't what I want, and then move on. We've all been there, done that. So there's somewhat of padding in that previous number, but the click rate is actually someone took action. People don't typically accidentally click links. So here with government, I kind of laugh at this because obviously, if something's coming from the government, people get very tense and thinking, am I in trouble? What's going on? So that might explain that. Where vitamin supplements, obviously is a trend, maybe is just has a lower click rate is because people may be not as interested or there's too many options. But around 2% is a good rate for open, right? Even think of the 1% rule in sales. So a click rate of 2.6% is very good. And then the bounce rate, this really just reflects how clean your list is, right? So this just tells you if this bounce rate is high, this just says, hey, your list isn't, there's a lot of bad emails here. So when I look at this in manufacturing, I can see that, look, their goal, in manufacturing, their business is what it is. They're probably not paying attention to their list. Where if you look at deals and e-coupons, right, their whole business is getting the coupon in front of you. So they probably take a lot more effort to make sure that their lists are clean. But you just want to watch out, make sure your lists are reasonable, because if your bounce rate gets too high, then you get flagged as spam. So that's why you want to keep that as low as possible.
Thank you, Dan. And with that in mind, let's talk about strategies for building an email list, right? So it's all fun and good to talk about, oh yeah, we can have this great ROI on an email campaign. doesn't really mean anything if we're starting from zero email subscribers. So how do we get to a point where we have a really robust list of engaged subscribers who want to get content from us? Well, that starts really ideally in a perfect world with the opt-in. The opt-in is when a prospect or an individual says, yes, I want to receive an email from you. I want to receive future emails from you. Basically, they're saying, yes, if you send me something, it's not going to be spam. And to Dan's point, long term, a bounce rate or spam being flagged as spam, this hurts our business. This hurts this a marketing channel that can be really, really profitable from us, because if enough people mark us as spam, everyone's going to mark us as spam, and then we're just not going to show up. We're not going to we're not going to have any opens. We're not going to have any clicks. We're not going to have any bottom line impact on the business. So we really want to be in a position where people are saying, yes, I want to receive this, add me to your email list, send me more stuff. We'll walk through 10 strategies here on how to build that list. An easy one, really low hanging fruit, is a sign up form on your website. You can put this in the footer. You can put this in a banner on your homepage. You can put this on your contact page. But a place for some people to say, yes, I would like to sign up, is a really, really low hanging piece of fruit that you could do this afternoon. You can promote signups through social media. So if you have a really engaged social media following, get those people to sign up for your email list as well. Give them a glimpse of what they're missing out on. Give them an offer and tell them to sign up for your newsletter list and boost those numbers. There are also tools that you can use to incentivize signups as well. So if people refer a family member or a friend to become a subscriber as well, they do that enough times, maybe they get a t-shirt or a mug or some sort of branded swag from you. You can also use paid campaigns, paid advertising campaigns on Facebook and other channels to get new email subscribers and really build that list. I'm sure everyone in this room networks to some level, some degree, and networking can be another way of building out your email list. When you're trading business cards, just say, hey, would you be interested in being added to our email list? We'd love to send you some of our blasts in the future. Probably going to say yes because they're rubbing elbows with you. That's an easy win as well. Once you go home and you're organizing your business cards, just add them to your list. A pop-up offer on your website is another strategy. I know we all universally in the 90s and early 2000s hated pop-ups. We wanted to burn down our computers every time we saw one, but they're coming back. And the thing that is cool about them is they're often coming back with an offer. So there's a pop-up and then there's a download opportunity, and as a bonus, you get added to the email channel. With that in mind, using lead generation magnets, so having some sort of white paper or gated video or content on your website, and say, hey, give us your email address. We'll give you this piece of content to help your business. That can be another strategy of building your list. Another couple easy things: create a newsletter sign up checkbox during your checkout. So if you sell things online, just have another box that says, yes, I would like to opt in to your email blasts. And you can do the same thing on your contact form as well. Right before somebody hits send, they can check another box that says, yep, totally feel free to contact me. And then in some cases, and Dan, you can chime in on this if you'd like, in some cases, it's appropriate to buy a list. I don't use this a lot as a content marketer. I always try to go for the opt-in. But if you're moving into a market where you don't have a lot of contacts or an industry that you don't have a lot of experience, in some cases, you might choose to buy a list to just get your feet wet, get your foot in the door into a new area, and try a cold email campaign to really start warming up a few contacts. Dan, do you
Yeah,
have anything you would
yeah,
say?
real quick with the buying a list, what you have to watch when buying a list is that how clean that list is. Sometimes places that claim, oh, we're going to sell you all these emails, they're not keeping up with emails, whether they go bad. People aren't roles anymore. So it's important that not only when you're buying a list, you buy from a reputable place, but there's also tools out there that will actually go through and they call cleaning to make sure that those are valid. So basically, it quickly sends an email and make sure that it doesn't get a bounce back message. And if it does, it removes it. So I would recommend, if you're going to buy a list, go through someone reputable, and I would run it through a cleaning tool to make sure that, because again, if you get a high bounce rate, it'll be your domain that gets flagged.
Thank you, Dan. With that in mind, now that we know we have how to build a list, let's talk about what do we do when we have the list? How do we actually create content that's meaningful for them? We talked about, oh, got a little bit ahead of myself there. So one thing to keep in mind is that the average person receives 121 emails per day. That's aggressive uh, and borderline abusive as well. As email senders, as marketers, as business owners, if we want to succeed in the email landscape when we're competing against 100 different entities every single day, we have to build a reputation for creating emails so good you can't not open them. Our subscribers have to want to receive those emails. They should get excited when they see your name in that little send box inside their email inbox. So, how do we get to a point where people are engaged enough and excited enough to receive our content and excitedly hit that open button? I will share a piece of advice that one of my editors gave me, and I shared this during the blogging webinar as well. And I was working in an editorial department, so it was journalism. And he said the job of a headline is to get somebody to read the first sentence of your article, and the job of the first sentence is to get somebody to read the rest of the article. And the idea was if they read the rest of the article, they would read the entire issue, and if they read the entire issue, they'd pay for the next one. And we can apply that same strategy to our emails as well, because there's a cadence in how people engage with emails. First thing they see is the subject line. In some cases, they're going to then see a preview, and then they're going to see the first line of the email, and then it's just copying content from there on out. So the job of the subject line is to get people to open the email. The job of the first sentence is get them to read the body of the email. And once they read the body, we're really working to get them to some sort of call to action. And if we really nail the subject line, the preview text, the first sentence, we're really going to improve our email performance overall. As a copywriting best practice, and this is one that almost all other writing recommendations are built off of, is this idea of omit needless words. I talked about this in a little bit more detail during the blogging webinar, but this is really an emphasis on word economy. Shakespeare said brevity is the soul of wit. Well, it's also the key to strong copy. And this is also important to consider when you think about email subject lines. They get truncated. They get cut off when they're too long. So we really want to focus on having really quick, snappy subject lines, really quick, snappy preview texts, and really quick, snappy emails in general. The other thing to keep in mind too is think about all of the times you've received an email, especially cold email from somebody you weren't expecting to receive from, and you open up their email and it's as long as your arm. Nobody wants to read that, especially from somebody you don't know or you're not familiar with. Keep your message as brief and informative and valuable as possible, and don't get too long, don't get too lengthy. And I would recommend watching the blog webinar, the session on copywriting. It's a really quick primer, but I think it's a lot more valuable than we have time to get into right now. With that in mind, though, let's talk about some of those features of an email that we just talked about: the subject line, preview text, and the actual body copy, and the CTA. And I have a quick screenshot here from my own email inbox, and we just see all of these subject lines lined up together. They all have different benefits, advantages, and disadvantages. So this one here starts with the fate of cookies, and then they used a little emoji icon. So a couple of things are happening here. One, when I just look at this screen, the first thing I see in here are these emojis. So emojis are great ways to help content stand out and visually draw the eye to that line. This is also a great intro to the subject line too, because the fate of cookies sounds like, I don't know, some sort of children's nightmare or maybe a great dream too. But really what they're talking about here is, if you click the link, is cookies from an internet perspective, tracking user data. So this is a great hook. Compare that to something like this: headlines, Callanish power materials. Not as sexy, not as engaging, and really not that informative or important unless you are already familiar with the Callanish brand and are really engaged in what they have to offer. And by the way, Callanish is just an oil and gas publication. So if you're really into oil and gas, maybe this stands out to you. But for the casual reader, doesn't really have anything sexy that's grabbing our attention. So these are all things to think about when we're creating content and we're creating subject lines. And we'll walk through a few different subject line techniques that you can use. You can personalize the subject line. So use their first name in the subject line. You can use emoji. We just looked at that, right? Visually, an emoji stands out in that field of text and grabs attention. Keep it short. We talked about that rule of omitting needless words and your subject line getting cut off if it's too long. We really want to make sure that we're being viewed, especially on mobile. It's really easy to have your subject line cut off in mobile. We can use humor to stand out, to grab attention. We can use urgency. What's a deadline? How much time is left in the sale? That can increase clicks. We want to spark curiosity. So if you can get people interested, if you can tickle their curiosity bone, you're more likely to grab attention. We can be timely. We can reflect on the news. We can reflect on current events or use status and name recognition. So um, name drop somebody within your network or something in the news and really work to be relevant to the people that you're actually talking to. What do these look like in action? So if we were promoting this webinar series to our subscribers and we were trying to personalize the subject line, we might tell our email tool, inject the first name, and then write, unlock your marketing potential, join our exclusive webinar series. So really getting that first name in there so that we can personalize it and we can make that personal touch to our readers. We can also use emoji and just use those as visual anchors inside the inbox to grab attention and then use a great subject line. And this one also uses the personalization strategy as well. If we wanted to keep it short, we might just say master marketing and with an exclamation point there. If we wanted to use humor, we might say something like bored of boring webinars, try ours. If we wanted to use urgency, we could say something like, we could use FOMO, fear of missing out, to our advantage. Don't miss out, limited spots for our elite webinar series. If we wanted to spark curiosity, we could say, what could 4 webinars do for your career? Let's find out. If we wanted to be timely, we could say something like, tune in this month, elevate your marketing skills for 2024. So we have a little bit of a deadline here when we talk about this month. And by mentioning the year, we're also saying that this is relevant for right now. Get in while it's still valuable. And then if we wanted to use status or name recognition, we could say something like learn from the best, exclusive marketing insights from industry leaders. Of course, this isn't an exhaustive list of subject line techniques, but they are a start and they are meant just to be a little bit of an inspiration for you as you move through in the future. With that, the other half of this image is the preview text. So in some cases, sometimes when people send emails, they don't include a preview text. And so what you get is the first line of the email. And that's fine if you have a killer first line. But the preview text can be another way of adding value, of grabbing attention. So this one, for example, what to see at Steelers training camp. For me, I don't really care about that. I don't watch a lot of football. I'm not really interested in the Steelers, so this was a miss. But this subject line, though, or this preview text, plus Stage AE's new sober space. Now, this is interesting because I'm a music fan, so I do go to Stage AE once or twice a year. And sober living, alcohol-free is a pretty hot trend right now. So I'm kind of curious about Stay AG's sober space. And if they hadn't had that preview text in here, I would have glanced over this and skipped this email entirely. So having a really good preview text snippet can be really, really valuable to your open rates. So what are some techniques we can use? We can continue the story started in the subject line. We can add value or another benefit. We can personalize the preview text. We can use some sort of call to action. We can ask a question. We can emphasize some sort of exclusivity. We can inject humor. We can add urgency. And so what does this actually look like? If we wanted to continue the story started in the subject line, our subject line might be learn from the best, exclusive marketing insights with industry leaders. And then join me, Dan Simpkins, Misha Gerhardt, and Juliana Francesca. These are all the speakers that have been engaged in this series. And so it just adds more detail to that initial subject line. If we wanted to add more value, we could have a subject line like increase open rates by 15%. We'll show you how in the preview text. In personalization, we might have something like board of board webinars, try ours. And then in the preview text, we'd start off with the first name. I think you'd get a kick out of this. On the CTAs, our subject line might be what could forced webinars do for your career? Let's find out. Our preview text is just sign up today. Easy, quick CTA. If we wanted to ask a question, if we were using subject line, the average person receives 120 plus emails a day. Our preview text might be, do yours stand out? So it directly responds to the subject line. It offers a question, which creates some uncertainty and potentially leads to a click or an open. If we were trying to focus on exclusivity, we might say something like, don't miss our webinar, only 3 seats remain. So there's some sort of limitation there. There's that FOMO, that fear of missing out, that we're really grabbing onto to get people to click. If we wanted to inject some humor, we might have a subject line like webinar alert, and our preview text could be something like, our tickets are selling faster than Taylor Swift's. And if we wanted to use some urgency, our subject line might be, did you get your webinar tickets? Preview text is time's running out. So again, we're using urgency, we're using that FOMO to inspire action. Next up, let's talk about body text. So this is just the content in the body of your email. And we have a quick screenshot here from New York Times. Just want to walk through this. They have, so we saw this subject line over here. Are artificial sweeteners safer than sugar? Health concerns have been mounting for decades. So this one actually spoke to me personally. I love LaCroix flavored water. I don't really know what's in them, and I always kind of worry what is in them and whether or not it's going to hurt me, especially if I buy a case of like 12 and I'll drink 8 on the first day, and then I wonder, what happened? How's this going to impact me? So this is actually really great for me. But the whole point of New York Times sending out these emails is it's just trying to get people to the website for one of 2 reasons. One, they want advertisers to be happy, and 2, they want to get new subscriptions. And so in every turn, what it's going to do is have a really quick, engaging first sentence. Usually they're going to ask some sort of question to really get somebody engaged. And then they're going to have a CTA that pushes through to the website. They have a really, really refined formula for this. And if you are a New York Times subscriber, you've probably seen this exact formula 100 times before. So a personalization, we talked about this in the subject line in the preview text. A personalization in the email body is a really easy tool to use as well. And we can even sprinkle that throughout the email. So if I'm writing a multi-paragraph email, sometimes I'll include the first name in like the 3rd paragraph in just one of the lines there, just to show them that, hey, I'm really thinking about you as an individual. This is really important for you. Pay attention here. The other thing too is once we have them in the email, we want to hold their attention the entire time. So again, this goes back to omit needless words, stay relevant, be catchy. We want to hold their attention the whole time they're in the email so that we can eventually move them to a CTA. And look how quickly New York Times does this. This is 2 sentences and then the CTA. Really, really simple, really, really direct. So there's not a lot of fluff here. It's just, this is the story that's happening. Come find out. And they really just use this cliffhanger to get us to click through. This is also complemented by the CTA. Most of this email is CTAs. So here's what we know. This is pushing us to the story. They've already primed us with the body copy, but they also have this other CTA here as well. Sign up for the wellness newsletter for Time subscribers only. So there's some exclusivity here. We have this CTA, we have this CTA. Notice that both of them stand out with bold lettering. They both use some sort of graphic to help draw more attention to that area. So if you open this, probably the first thing you're going to see is this image and this CTA. So they're really emphasizing the opportunity to click and take an action. With that in mind, Very rarely, if ever, do you ever want to send an email without a clear CTA. Remember, the bottom line is this is marketing. We have some sort of goal in mind. We have objectives that we're trying to achieve. Always include a CTA, some sort of call to action. And again, using a button or a graphic to increase click rates and also enhance UX is a great strategy for improving your emails overall. All right, I have talked for way too long. Dan, you want to talk about some email tools and eventually some AI?
Yeah, so go ahead and click to the next screen. So these are just recommendations. All of these email tools are doing the same thing. You're creating a campaign because remember, in a campaign, one email is not enough. You have to do anywhere from 6 to 10. I mean, and you spread them out and you change up their times. And so MailChimp, Flowdesk, these Constant Contact, and yet another email merge. Those tools will allow you to set up those campaigns. You also, if you have a CRM system, a lot of CRM systems can send email campaigns. The advantage to using your CRM is that you can kind of pull them into other business processes that these tools may not, because they're purely focused on the email campaign. But they also interface with a lot of tools, so there's a good chance that a tool you're using would interface. But so these are ones you could start with if you want to get your feet wet. If you haven't done email campaigns, we recommend one of these four. If you go next. And the same thing with the automation tools, right? So how people respond to your emails, if they click it as you're creating these marketing funnels, you want to send certain emails based on certain behaviors. If they, if they don't do anything, you want to send them like, okay, after so much time, remind them again. If they click an action, you can say, okay, send them a thank you. If they gave you something like your email address, or if they're looking to go down the path, maybe you're giving them more information. But there's a lot of automation tools to this as well. And again, a lot of those automation tools are built into your CRM as well. So if you have a CRM, because once they convert to a customer, well, now they're in your system as a customer, and there's other things you could obviously do with them in the CRM system. Click next. Oh, and also, you don't have to go back, but in today's world, as we're all aware, you need the ability to unsubscribe, and that's what a lot of these tools allow you. If someone wants to unsubscribe, it'll have the link there, and that will manage that list for you. So that's their advantage to those systems. One thing I will share that people might not realize, you won't have the automation and you really have to schedule your own time, but you can technically send up to 200 emails from your inbox and not get flagged as spam. So you could technically, if you had 600 emails, you could send out 3 separate emails of 200. Yeah, I would always do maybe 190 just to be safe. But then you don't have the automation in there. The unsubscribe gets more difficult because then they're going to email you back and say, get me off this list, and you have to manage. So you can do it, but it's a little bit more work on your end. But let's look forward to AI and email. So what are people using AI for today, right? So obviously to write subject lines, a lot of the preview text copy that Patrick shared. Also sequences, right? If you do a campaign, it'll write out, you could say to AI, hey, write me a 6-email campaign. It'll write out each email, right, separately. So that is the power of AI. Right. So when we talk about AI, we talk about augmentation versus automation. And augmentation is making you, the individual, more powerful, getting you to do more work done. And even though AI is very impressive, it's not perfect, and it still needs that human to guide it. But it also, that's where AI might not. And here's where we're at. Maybe all of you can relate. Is people are starting to recognize auto-generated content. So how do you personalize that? And that's where the human touch can be creative to give you that unique language that will help you stand out. And before I get to the last point, is there anything, Patrick, you want to add to those elements?
Yeah, I will say that using AI for writing copy can be tricky. It's not as easy as you think it's going to be, at least not to have a product that is really good. What I often say is your input is equal to your output. So if you want help writing an email campaign from AI or something like ChatGPT, you really want to be clear. And I think we talk about this on the next slide as well, but you really want to be clear about what it is that you want, what you're looking for, what your company is, who your target audience is. But we'll talk about that more in a second. But it's worth emphasizing that it's only as good as what you feed into it.
Correct. And the last piece is future use. So this is where marketing is going on so many levels. And it's the idea of personalizing the experience to you, the consumer. And so as Patrick was showing in the earlier slides, right, automation can add your name into it. But really where this personalized experience, and it's scary, right? How much Google and Facebook and all these technologies know about us, and all these businesses are collecting your data. Well, this AI on the fly is going to be able to respond to your online behaviors and give you content that they know you're doing. And we're seeing that now, but this is really going to be the full experience. And one thing to note, and I know a lot of people say, well, that's these bigger companies, these bigger corporations are the ones doing this. No, actually, this technology is very affordable, right? You just have to know how to use it strategically, and you have to have a strategy behind it. But the last thing I'll say about this, because it's starting to get here, but it's not here fully. I'm only sharing this because keep your eyes open, because tools are going to start to say we are going to have AI respond to this data points on individuals. So look out for that. But where I really see this taking effect is, there's that whole top of the funnel, like Patrick was saying, get them a line that will get them to click, get them the sentence that will get them to read. But once they're past that and they're going down the funnel is where AI is going to help channel them further down the funnel, because all the funnel, as you get further down the funnel, you're just educating your potential customer more and more in your services so they convert. And I really see the power of AI responding along the way in the funnel to help push them down to the end. So that's going to be very interesting as that develops. You want to cover these,
Yeah,
Patrick?
yeah, I'll cover these since I basically covered them on the last slide. So, like I said, your input is equal to your output. So, as you're asking AI to help with subject lines or preview text or body copy, it really needs to understand what your business does. It needs to understand your goals. It needs to understand who your target is. That's at a bare minimum. Ideally, you should also tell it, what your branding is like. What are your brand values? What's your brand voice? How should they engage with your target audience? What is your audience persona? The more detail that you can feed into it, the better the copy will be that it puts out. So you still want to test everything, and we'll talk about metrics in a moment. You still want to use your best practices, but really want to be careful if you use AI. The results can be great. They can be really strong. And I say that even as a professional copywriter, but it's only as good as what you put in. So just be really, really careful if you're using AI. So with that in mind, how do we actually measure success, and how do we prove that our email is having a bottom line impact for our overall business? The first thing to do is, we talked about at the beginning, monitor opens, monitor those clicks, monitor bounces and unsubscribes. The higher our open rates, the higher our clicks, the better our emails are performing. But this is just in the email sequence, right? It doesn't actually show us how much business we've generated. And that leads us over here. This is phase 2, is using UTM codes to track performance in GA4. So there are a couple of things to unpack here. In previous webinars, we've talked a little bit more about GA4, which is a tool that Google provides that helps us understand user behavior on our website. So it shows us where people are clicking, what they're clicking on, whether or not they're making phone calls, using contact forms, all of this really, really rich user data for the website. And what a UTM code does is it's a little snippet of text that sits on the end of a URL. And so basically what you can do is you can take a URL and a snippet of UTM code, and you can embed that inside your email. And what you'll be able to do is track how many people clicked on that individual link and how they behaved on your website once they got there. So it's just another way of tracking user behavior and really tracking the performance of an email and how it influences user behavior on your website as well. I've dropped the link to Google's UTM code builder in here. You don't have to write it down. I will send this out with the slides later today. But this is a really great tool. I have this actually saved in my browser so I can just open it up whenever I need it. And then we really want to monitor conversions. So in GA4, we can monitor events or conversions, and we can set these up however we want. We can set these up as people who fill out our contact form or that click our call now button, or maybe we want them to visit a certain page, or maybe we want them to download something. We can really pay attention to that in GA4. If you're in Shopify, if you're in e-commerce, Shopify makes this so easy because the email and everything else is built into their system. So if you're using Shopify's email tool, you can show how much money you've generated from an individual email. So when I was talking about the record store example earlier, we probably sent 6 or 7 emails with different offers over a 24, 36-hour period. And with each email, we were able to see the revenue that they generated from each individual email. And so Shopify does a really good job of kind of closing that circuit between the email and the actual revenue that's generated. So if you're in there, it's a great tool for data. So we covered a lot of ground. Some of it got a little technical. It can get a lot more technical too if you wanted to. Uh, but does anybody have any questions for us while you still have us here today?
I do have a quick question. What would be a general cost of an email list? And I'm sure it would depend on, obviously the number of people we're targeting and how extensive it is, but just out of curiosity.
All right, let me look up so a really reputable, so I have a lot of experience in email campaigns, so the B2B world as well. And usually when you're buying lists, that's typically for B2B, right? Because what these lists sell you is people in certain roles or positions or certain industries. So that's really where that comes into play. It's not as much with just the individual public, right? So basically buying the list is buying from the yellow pages, not the white pages, which is everyone. So make sure you're either whatever you're selling or whether it's a service or a product, if it's for someone in another, if you can narrow them to a business role, I would say here, let me do the math real quick because it's been a while since I've calculated this, but hold on, I should have done this. I mean, it depends. Like a lot of it could be cents per email to this one showing almost like $2 an email, but that seems kind of high. So maybe I'm miscalculating that. But I would say Zoom Info is a really big one that people use in that space. But Zoom Info is expensive. The one that I've been using is called UpLead, and UpLead is, and I've tested it personally with my own experimenting with list cleaners. And UpLead is just as good as Zoom Info in my opinion, and it's more affordable. Another thing you could do though, Sarah, is if sometimes they force you to buy so many credits up front, but if your list isn't that large, like for instance for the remote online notary, I pulled lawyers from this list, and he just paid for the list through me, so he didn't have to pay for the massive list that I pay for. I just sold him, I looked up how many lawyers are here, and I forget, there might have been 700 or 800 across the state, and then he just paid for those 700 or 800 emails.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? All right, perfect. Well, if anybody does have any questions in the future, feel free to reach out to me at patrick@poeticamarketing.com. You can also find us online at poeticamarketing.com. If you have questions for Dan, you can reach him at dan.simpkins@dxperformance.com. You can also find him on his website, dxperformance.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today.